Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you are listening to or watching Radio Maine, our video podcast where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit, along with people here in Maine who make Maine great and also understand the importance of creativity and the human spirit in our wonderful state. Today, I have with me Tom Mahoney. He is a community connector and a resource team leader with Harpswell Aging at Home, and is doing some really interesting things up in the Harpswell region. It's great to talk to you today. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really intrigued by the work that you're doing because, as you and I were talking about before we started rolling, it's a simple lunch program is what you called it. But sometimes the simplest programs can be the most important. And as a community connector, somebody who's actually helping individuals in the community connect with one another, I guess. Let's start with that. Let's start with what is the simple program that you are doing right now in Harpswell that I think has gotten some attention?
It has gotten some attention, yes. It's called ROMEOs. I often tell people when I'm speaking in public, it's a dating service just to get their attention and then say, no, ROMEOs is an acronym, and it stands for Retired Older Men Eating Out. We started it 2 years ago. Harpswell Aging at Home is a voluntary organization that's in Harpswell to help people live longer in their homes and healthier and safer as much as possible. So all of our services are free. One of those programs, which falls under our food category, is called Meals in a Pinch, similar to Meals on Wheels. And we take meals to people, and it's all free. And after a while, a number of drivers were going back to the leaders and saying, you know, we've got a lot of older gentlemen living alone and not eating well. Their idea of a good meal is beer and potato chips. Can we do something? And so members of the steering committee, actually 4 women, not men, but 4 women, got a grant and said, let's do something to socialize men. And about that time that they were thinking about it, I volunteered for another one of their food programs called Lunch with Friends, and it was in Cundy's Harbor, and I had a blast. I was just in the serving line and dishing out food, and at the end said, this is a lot of fun. If you need help in the future, I'd be glad to volunteer again. So the woman in charge of the program 2 days later called me up and said, let's meet. Let's chat about what you're doing, what your background is. So I told them, and she said, we've got this grant. Would you be willing to run with this? So we had 2 focus groups. A lot of guys got there, or 10 at each session. The guys that came had their arms twisted by wives and girlfriends and others. And I said, you know, socialization for older men is an important piece. We've got to do it. And they're sitting there with their arms crossed and like, yeah, right. You know, we're going to do something. And I said, you know, it is a factor in reducing a guy's life, being isolated. Who lives longer, guys? Women or men? And they acknowledge women do. Okay, good. There's our starting point. Do you know the negative factors of being isolated? And none of them do. And I said, it equates with smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's harmful. Do we want to die younger than women? Do we want to be with our spouses or partners? What's our goal? So they reluctantly agreed that they would give it a shot. And then we tried to come up with some names, and a guy said, there is this program in various communities, and it's called ROMEOs, and this is what it stands for. So we thought that would work. The first meal or event that we put together involved antique cars at a park in Harpswell. The guys did a good job of going out and getting 22 antique car folks to come to the event. Half of them brought a partner. So that's 33 people right there. There were 10 guys working with me to set up this barbecue outside. And so now we're up to 44 or 43 of us. 10 guys showed up. It's like, oh, we're feeding all the presenters and the workers, really not the population we're looking for. So we went in a little bit different direction. I kept talking to people in the community about the program and what we were trying to do. And the manager of the recycling center at Harpswell said, Well, there's a retired New York Yankees manager living here in Harpswell. And his name is Stump Merrill. And so through a bunch of channels, I was able to reach him, told him what we were trying to do. He said, sure, I'll come and talk. So he put that out and said at this next one, Stump Merrill, blah, blah, of the New York Yankees will come and be our presenter. And 50 guys showed up for the lunch. And he came in his Yankee uniform, wearing his World Series rings. And he came into the building. We introduced ourselves to one another, and we sat down and were getting acquainted. And while we were chatting, he said, stop. What do you mean stop, Stump? Stop. And he said, listen. The room was filled with chatter. Guys were talking to one another and hanging out. And that's the way we focused on it. Just come, hang out with one another, talk with your buddies, and so forth. And it's gone from there.
I think it's brave of you to invite an icon of the Yankees world into a town that, for those people who might be listening who are not from Maine, may not understand this, but we're a Red Sox nation over here. So that was very brave. And you're from Connecticut.
Connecticut, yes.
So I'm assuming you probably have more of a Yankees inclination?
Actually, no. My parents were from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
And my father was a diehard Red Sox fan.
Okay.
So I was a Red Sox fan as well.
Yeah.
But Stump Merrill, I attended the University of Maine as an undergrad, and he was a coach there at the time. So there was a little bit of affiliation. But I did bounce it off down the road. Channel 6 morning co-anchor by the name of Lee Goldberg, used to be the sports director there, talked about going to all the Red Sox World Series games and the Patriot championships, the Super Bowls. And I thought, okay, if I can get him to balance out the Yankee aspect, it'll be good. So I was telling my partner about this, and she said, well, interesting you want to get Lee. I taught him Spanish in high school. She called the station, got connected with him, and he said yes, and he came out. And he did. He, in fact, balanced it off, and Stump came to that luncheon, and we have a picture of the three of us hanging out there. And the next morning on his program, he talked about the ROMEOs. Lee Goldberg did. And he told one of his partners there, Todd Guttner, I'll never be a Romeo, but I'll be an Omeo. And Todd looked at him kind of quizzically and said, what do you mean? He said, I'll always be an older man eating out, but I'll never be retired. So we get some publicity that way as well.
One of the things I really like about that particular quote, this idea of never being retired, is the sense that I have is that many people, we've traditionally thought of retirement, okay, you're 65, all right, now you're done. But a lot of people, they want to continue to be active and generative and doing things far into their later years. I mean, my dad was practicing medicine and until he had a medical diagnosis that took him kind of out of that possibility. But people want to be engaged generally, I think.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Are you finding that in the conversations that you're having with people who come to these lunches?
Yeah, quite a few of them are doing something part-time, like myself. I retired from public health and was just hanging out doing small jobs, and this opportunity came along. As I said, Harpswell Aging at Home is a nonprofit organization. I'm one of only 2 people who are paid, and it's by grants. But there are 400 volunteers with Harpswell Aging at Home who provide over 16,000 hours of service every year. And so, yeah, people want to be engaged doing something and not just sitting home or going out and hanging out somewhere doing not a lot. So there are guys who come who even volunteer for us. As our program has grown, I've had to ask for more help because we went from one building to another. The first building had all the tables and chairs set up. Now we have to go in and set them up. So there's that aspect. And then there's the welcoming part of it and getting the food there. And guys are volunteering and helping out and willing to take some leadership role in it. So, yeah, people want to still be engaged. I think it has to do with having a purpose or a meaning in life. And so they do get engaged.
You mentioned your background in public health. I mean, you had a long career health education, disease prevention, public information, nonprofit management. You did a lot of work with municipal HIV and STD prevention programs, overseeing counseling and testing initiatives, multiple leadership roles supporting families and individuals with health challenges. Did you think that all of these things would lead you to something that's addressing what I'm not sure was always identified as being a significant health risk, which is social isolation? Did you think that you would end up in this place doing this work?
Oh, not at all. It was not on my radar. And as I said, I fell into it and realized that being in that age category of an older adult, how important it is still to have things to do, work to do, be engaged. And through the Maine Council on Aging have learned that there is a lot of discrimination and bias against older individuals in this country. And having gone through one of their programs, realized, yeah, I was one of those people who looked at older people and kind of put them aside and said, they're really not that important. They don't count. But we do. And so I'm glad to be in it and part of it.
You bring up a really important point, and it's something that I have thought about more and more as time has gone on. And that is that this seems to be one of the sort of final frontiers of bias that people, I mean, everybody, barring the unfortunate early demise of a person, everybody is eventually going to age. And yet there is such stigma attached to being someone who is older, which is amazing. It's amazing that and maybe it's a fear thing, like maybe I will never be that person. I don't want to be that person. I'm pushing back against that identity that I don't want to have. But why do we tolerate that ism? Why do we tolerate ageism? What is going on that we can't understand that we're essentially biased against our future selves?
Consider commercials. What are commercials? Who's the population that commercials are really targeting, right? It's much younger people. People in their 20s, 30s, 40s, not people in their 70s and 80s. And so there's this bias. And it's kind of like, well, they've lived their life, you know? That's it. They don't need any support or whatever. And it's the vocabulary. I mean, if we just take one word and say, well, Tom's an old guy. And so what kind of image does that conjure up? Old guy, as opposed to saying, Tom's an older guy. Different connotation, perspective. And just changing that word a little bit gives us a different perspective on people. And so that's something that we do too. We talk about older as opposed to old, and that we still have value. We still have something to contribute. We still want to enjoy life, whether it's with grandchildren, going on vacation, being with friends, taking a bike ride, playing pickleball, volunteering somewhere. So we want to not diminish what older people still want and can contribute to society. We have a wisdom, even if it's just from life experience, right? We've had all kinds of challenges, good ones, bad ones. We've weathered it. We've come this far. Ideally, we have a perspective that's really what life is about. And how do we manage that determines how our lives go.
I'm guessing that if you spent time in the HIV and STD prevention world, that you have some significant familiarity with social stigma and the really significant damage that social stigma can cause. Where if you're talking about somebody who has a diagnosis of HIV, and this is much better than it once was.
It is.
But back in the day, it was seen as evil, sinner, people were blamed for their diseases. People they wouldn't prevent the problem. They couldn't go for treatment. I mean, it is a horrible, horrible thing that happens when people feel like they can't show up as themselves in a space. And people like me as a clinician and like you and the work that you've done, like it makes it harder to help people if the idea is that somehow somebody else over there is the bad person because of whatever it is that's causing their illness. I mean, I don't want to project my experience. Tell me about your experience.
That's very true. There was a lot of negativity to HIV and discounting people, dismissing them, right? If you're gay, you're not worth anything. And that's not true. I went to a Catholic boys' high school and realized that there were classmates of mine that were gay. But back in the 70s, it wasn't something one acknowledged or talked about. Fast forward a bunch of years, I'm in New Haven, Connecticut, running a Ronald McDonald House. And I reconnect with a high school buddy. And he's a writer for the local newspaper and a Connecticut magazine. He's a theater critic. And so long story short, we'd go to dinner once a month. And one night we were walking the streets of New Haven. I'd made a turn to a restaurant that we typically go into. And he said, no, come on, we're going to go someplace else. I looked at him kind of quizzically, and he then said, trust me. And I thought, oh no, what does this mean? So what we ended up doing was he took me into a gay bar restaurant, and which I knew I was in as soon as I looked around and saw there were a lot of guys, but there were no women. And so he took me there to tell me that he was gay. And I said, I already know that about you. It's not something new. And he then revealed, excuse me, that he was HIV positive. And it was at a time in which I was applying for a position within the HIV field. So he told me a lot about his story and the discrimination and the heartache that he faced, including his family rejecting him. So as we left this restaurant, the guy who stood at the door, who looked like an NFL linebacker, was following us down the street. And I asked him what was going on. Why is that guy following us? And he said, to protect us. I said, from what? He said, well, it's not uncommon to walk out of here and be assaulted by people because of being gay. And I thought, I'm not gay, but I'm going to be perceived as such. And then I realized what he faced on a regular basis just because of a negative perspective that people had about him. And he was a wonderful individual, a great writer, had a great sense of humor, fun to be with. And I thought, this is wrong. The bias against this community is just wrong. And so when that job came up, I took it, and it was really because of him and him having to face such belligerent and ugly parts of our country that discriminate against folks. And so I did, and met people who had sons who were gay, and they were then encouraged to speak up and say, yep, my son is gay, he has this disease, but we love our son, and he's a wonderful person. And in that community, we got a lot of support, and we changed it in maybe just a corner of the world.
I think it's such an important perspective because I went to school not long after you did. I mean, and even within my generation, still people were not talking about being gay. And I have a very close friend who wrote me a letter back before the time of email and said, you know, I've had this secret for a long time, and I need to tell you this because I'm with this wonderful person and happens to be the same gender as me. And I didn't want to tell you, and it was so hard on my family, and it was so heartbreaking for me because I never needed her to write me that letter. It was an apologetic letter, and I was like, why should somebody have to apologize for this aspect of themselves? And even though it may, if you're 20, maybe you and I are describing something that seems like ancient times, but,
It does, yes.
but it's not ancient times. It was very recent. So I think when you talk about ROMEOs and you talk about getting older people together, I mean, older people are people who grew up during these times. And even now we're sort of back again in a weird polarized situation where weird stigmas that I think many of us hoped might have been at least diminished are kind of cropping up again because people are sort of one against another. So you're sort of repeating what you did in Connecticut, where you're like, well, this is existing, so let's get people together and have a meal. And you're addressing it in a way that's very inclusive and welcoming. Do you feel like that's an intentional approach on your part, or just sort of fell in your lap?
It's an interesting question that you asked, because I have to fill out a data report every month for the state of Maine. We're supported by a group called Lifelong Maine, and they want to know what we're doing to help people with cognitive impairment. Are we inclusive of them? And we are. And then I write, and we also have people who are who have Parkinson's. We have a guy who's 90% blind. We have individuals who come in wheelchairs and walkers. And I've known some of those people and has made sure that they come to the event. And there's a group of veterans who come, and they have guys who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of them are in wheelchairs. And they make sure they come as well. So it isn't just me, but I think it's part of the atmosphere or philosophy of the group that everybody, no matter who they are welcome to attend this lunch. And so guys will get up and say, okay, don't worry, to a guy in a wheelchair, I got your meal, don't worry about it. They'll go get it. And that's what happens. And we have people who will pick up others and get them there because they can't drive. I did invite people, but it was also supported by the guys who attend. So it's not just me, it's the whole group has this philosophy, like everybody's welcome, whether you have any issues or not. We all have issues, but anything that's maybe overt, they're welcome to be there. And that's life. That's what our community really represents.
And you're right, that's life. And that's also something that a grant or a legislation or a law doesn't necessarily force into being. I mean, you happen to have access to a grant, which is enabling you to support this program. And I think that's a really important statement to make, that there is money that needs to go into this. And also, you could have all the money in the world and you could just have 40 people standing around with the antique cars and have 10 people show up. So it's really the caring that develops, and I assume has probably developed over the 2 years of your program, where people, you start connecting with people, you start caring about them, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I think that's true. We do help one another. The guys tell their stories. I start off every session now by asking them to stand, because we've got tables and chairs, and they come in, they stand for a while, and then they get, just like young people. Oh, you're my friend. Let's go sit at this table, right? Not somewhere new. And I ask them to get up, go find someone they don't know, shake hands with them, just tell your name. I'm Tom Mahoney. Nice to meet you. You are. And the idea is that you've made a connection. It's a very simple one, but you may see that person later out in the community someplace, and you can say hello. I mean, the last 2 lunches that we've averaged 75 guys coming to lunch. So it's not possible to know everybody who's there, but at least become a little bit more aware of who you're with. Another aspect of that, this lunch that has, I think, generated a lot of community is that when I did that first volunteer effort for Harpswell Aging at Home, there was a woman who came along, and she asked me, I had 3 dishes which I was to serve, and she asked if she could serve the first one on my right. And I said, no, it's my dish. You can't. Just trying to be funny. And she gave it right back to me. She said, well, that's my dish. I said, well, there's reason for you not to serve it. And she laughed, and a friendship started. And during that day, I'd say, this dish is better than that one. And she said, oh, there's people who wanted the food. Fast forward a few years, she came to me and said, if you'd like, I'll cook for the ROMEOs. We were ordering sandwiches, pre-made and such, and serving them. So she has been cooking for 1.5 years for our program. And she's probably one of the biggest reasons guys come, aside from the friendship and companionship, because she makes great food. And she asks them what they want, and she considers that for the next meal. And guys like working with her in the kitchen. And so there's this genuine sense that this program is about caring. There's quality food, there's time to chat, we have a presentation, and we have laughs. I'll make some announcements and they'll start poking me about the announcements. And it's an atmosphere where it's okay.
So I haven't asked you about the aspect of it that I think is important as well, and that is about the male aspect of things. And having obviously been female born, and I have a husband, I have a son, I have two stepsons, and I have 5 brothers and big Catholic family. You understand the Catholic thing, Tom. Yeah, exactly. And I think we're getting close to 30. My mom has close to 30 grandchildren, great grandchildren.
Wow.
So there's a lot of boys in there. And I don't think it's always easy. I mean, I certainly know it has not been easy to be a woman in some parts of the world. And in medicine for me was very difficult for many years. But getting back to this idea that this is a men's group, I think there has been a challenge with being male in this culture, maybe within the last 10 years, maybe longer. I don't know. You tell me. Is there something about being an older male that's particularly difficult right now?
I don't know if there's anything that's particularly different. Well, facing immortality, right? It's not like when we were 20, when we didn't think it was ever going to happen to us, right? But now, here we are in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and some guys are in their 90s. It's around the corner somewhere. And we all hope that it's further out than close in. But guys have been traditionally taught to be strong, not to be weak, right? Not to be vulnerable. And so I think there's something that this generation has learned, that we can be vulnerable to some degree and rely upon one another and not just have to try and manage it on our own. I mean, that's not across the board. We try to target people who are living alone. We don't get all of them. And so there's this idea that I'm a guy, I can do it on my own. Or part of it's Yankee perspective. I'm going to be self-reliant. I don't need help from anybody. There's just one little story about that. We help with home repairs. We do home repairs for individuals in the community. And a 90-year-old woman called me this week. And she built her house, and she's got some plumbing issues and wondered if we could help, and we will help her out. She said, I've done it all my life, but now I'm at a point where I can't. It's like, you don't have to. We'll be glad to come out and help you. And that mentality exists, like, I should still be able to do it. So we have some guys who are that way and won't come because they don't think they need it. And I keep telling the guys who do come, so Tom Mahoney, you want to invite him? You keep doing it and find someone else who knows him and say, this is a good thing, come along. And they'll find there's a welcoming atmosphere, that you can be yourself, laugh, and have a great conversation with guys. So I think there's a softening within this community that actually gives men strength. It doesn't make them weak. And the veterans know that. They're a good example of, we're there for one another, because there's a lot that they have had to deal with because of war, and it's tough to go it alone. And so, hey, we're going to help you get through this. We know what it's like. You don't have to do it alone. And they're a really good part of our program, that they're there for one another and helping out with the community.
So I mentioned the potential difficulty of being male, and you just described, I think very eloquently, the difficulty of being an older male. And I'm wondering if there isn't the potential for kind of filtering down for younger men who are growing up at a very different time and very different culture. But still, I think there are some of the same pressures to be strong and to be able to be the heroes and the champions and the caregivers and the moneymakers. Do you think there's a possible impact that you could be having that is a trickle-down effect?
It's a really good question, and it's one that maybe we should consider. I'm hoping that these guys take it home and share it with their families in some fashion or another. I'm a basketball fan, and I don't know if you follow, the NBA playoffs are happening right now. And, young guy playing for the San Antonio Spurs, Victor, and I'm going to mispronounce his last name. I won't even try, but Victor, who's a center. When they won the Western Conference, he's over 7 feet tall, and he just broke down and was hugging all the players and expressed his gratitude to the team around him and the support and the success they've had. And the commentators picked up on it and said, isn't that great that he's able to express, he's so emotional about where he is right now, and share that with his teammates. And I thought, wow, that's a different perspective. They didn't view his tears as a weakness, but more as a strength that he's able to do that. So I think there was a little bit of push in that direction, and I was glad that the announcers perceived it and shared it. He was asked a question later on about two former San Antonio Spurs stars who were in the audience watching, and he said, "Do you get nervous with those guys here?" And he said, "No, they're my strength. They help me." He said, "I love these guys." How many times do you hear a guy say he loves another guy, even not in a romantic way, but just from a supportive way? And so I think it's individuals like Victor who will help change it. And maybe the older guys who have gotten some experience will do the same with their families. And maybe even point to him and say, look, it's okay to talk this way and to be this way. You don't have to be the strong one all the time. You can ask for help and get support.
I think a lot about aging and this idea that aging is a loss. It's a loss of a lot of patients. When I was a younger doctor, they'd be like, aging isn't for the weak, and yet it happens to everybody, right? So I think it does become associated with loss. It does, loss of function, loss of spouse, loss of job. And the framing is also specific. But is there another way that we could look at the gains that actually occur as the years go on, so that it's not always about, yes, let's acknowledge if you get cataracts, you're losing your vision. It is a very real thing.
Sure.
And also, now maybe you have cataracts, but maybe you actually have time to stop and look at those flowers if you want to, that are on the side of the road. Whereas if you're hopping in the car to drive your kids back and forth and go to work, there was not time for that. So is there that possibility that we could start looking at the advancing of years rather than, let's just be grateful for what we have left, or oh no, we've just lost another part of our body function. Can we shift that frame?
I think it has already started. I know when my parents retired, they aren't doing the sorts of things that I do, or that the people I associate with are. So I do think it's shifting, and it is being grateful for what we have and just say, yeah. It goes back to recognizing that life isn't always easy, that there are challenges, and maybe helping people have the tools to deal with the loss. As you said, whether it's vision, how many people have joint issues, right? You get out of bed in the morning and you feel stiff, and how do I loosen up that? Or losing a family member or a friend. That's really, I think, the challenge to this point, recognizing that we are going to have loss along a lot of different ways, and being able to manage that and still say, in spite of the loss, I still have, I still have this. And it's just simple joys of life that I think can help us. That it does for me. I know there've been multiple losses, and it's like, how do we have the resilience? That's really the word I was looking for. Where's the resilience that helps us manage all that and keep going and not lose hope? I think older people have a lot to share with younger people. And so doing intergenerational programs, I think, is important. They know tech a lot better than we do. But I think we are better at interpersonal communication and relationships. And so sharing the gifts that we have is important. I had a story and now I've lost it, so maybe it'll come back to me.
Well, I had an interesting conversation recently with somebody in the tech world, and it was a grouping of leaders and founders and CEOs that were here in Maine. And he was talking about the importance of the IRL, the importance of in real life experiences. And I completely agree with this. And also I love that it's now become like, it actually has like, it's called IRL as opposed to when I was growing up, it was just called life because there wasn't a digital world that we could all be part of. And so I think there is a hunger for this. I think there's a hunger across generations, people who are younger, I think, that didn't go through COVID or did go through COVID, they experienced in real life in a really different way. I think older people experienced in a way that you and I are more familiar with. So how do we make the space comfortable for people of all the generations? How do we make it so that people who feel social anxiety because they don't have as much experience IRL, how can we help them with skills that will enable them to talk with veterans who most of their life has been IRL? How do we, I don't know, cause that to be not easier, but at least more possible?
We put together events where we can have different generations mix with one another and help out. Some formal, some informal. And I'll tell you a story. I sit on the board of People Plus in Brunswick. And they had a young man from Bowdoin College who had to do some social service for something that he had done. And so he was providing tech assistance to People Plus members. And his thought was, okay, I've got X number of hours to put in. I'm going to do that. I'll meet with these individuals, tell them what they need to do, and then that's it. In the end, he wrote an essay to for the college, for the Common Good Fund. And in it, he essentially said, I thought all I had to do was put in these hours, help out people, and that's all that was needed. And he essentially said, that's not what was needed. It was my presence being with that person that made the most difference. He said, that's what I learned, that being present to another human being was the most important aspect of what I did as a volunteer. It wasn't the accumulation of hours or the information, but being present and listening to their story. And I think it's those sorts of events that shape us and change the world. Phones have taken away our ability, or maybe not our ability, our opportunities to interact, as you just said, face to face, right? It's easy to text, it's easy to send an email, but being face to face and having a conversation is a lot tougher. And I think that student realized that being present and listening, he learns a lot and he can relate to them. So it's intergenerational programs where we have fun. One of the members of Harpswell Aging at Home connected with one or two players from the rugby team at Bowdoin College. And they've helped us set up for some big events and tear down the event and put it away and so forth. The members of our team started supporting the rugby team, and we were going to the games. And then they would have a picnic afterwards, and we were invited to be part of it. So there was another opportunity to engage different generations and get to know one another and realize that each generation had something they could share and benefit from the other. So I think it's those sorts of events that make a difference. And there's something about grandparents. If grandparents can interact with grandchildren on a regular basis, that's good for both, right? Parents want to spend time with their families, and these opportunities make it possible to see one another in a different light.
Well, I'm glad that you've mentioned Bowdoin in a positive light at least twice. I know it's proximity also because Harpswell is very close to Bowdoin, but
Correct.
This is, of course, my alma mater. So
is it?
So I'm very pleased to hear that Bowdoin is contributing to the the greater good, because I know that is a goal of theirs, it's the common good.
Yes.
And I think there are opportunities that do exist in lots of different communities that do make it possible for people to interact. We're sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery, the Radio Maine is. We have monthly events on Thursdays, which I hope we'll be able to encourage you to come to a First Thursday art opening.
Sure.
And it is an unintentional intergenerational event, which happens to be focused around art, but we have food, and people have really developed some longitudinal relationships over the 10 years plus that the art gallery has been in business. And I think that these things exist. I mean, you're describing the ROMEOs meals as very specific for your demographic, and I think it sounds like it's been very successful and well received. But there are other places that people can plug into things that are going on that are just natural extensions of experiences that are truly intergenerational. And once people get there, do you have suggestions as someone who's sort of been an observer and leader in the field of human behavior? I mean, you said you pretty much force people, like, go find somebody you don't know, which is...
And that's not always easy for people to do.
No, it is not. So when somebody shows up at a space and they don't know people, is it just as simple as like joke with them about not letting them steal your serving plate? Or like how do people, what are some simple things that they can do to feel more comfortable?
I think it depends upon the type of individual you are, right? Introverts would maybe love to be at the art show, right? Or the gallery opening, but not necessarily know how to interact with someone. A bold move, go up and say, hi, I'm Tom Mahoney, and you are, I'm new at this. Can you help me understand this? With a question, or where are you from and how did you get here? Or what brought you in here? Those are bold moves. I talk a lot. So like I help out at a farmer's market, and that began 15 years ago. I went to a farmer's market in Brunswick, went to a particular stand, and the husband was wearing a Boston Red Sox baseball cap. We started talking about the Red Sox, and every Saturday we had that conversation. And then eventually they said, we need extra help. Would you be willing to work with us? And so I did. I think it's just a willingness to find some common piece and launch a conversation and see where it goes. And I've found most people are receptive, at least in Maine, are receptive to talking with strange individuals.
I hope you're not saying you're the stranger.
Yeah, I'm the stranger.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm really glad to hear that this group is available for the men of the Harpswell region, the older men of the Harpswell region, retired or not retired, the ROMEOs or the ROMEOs.
Oh, yes.
How can people learn more about this program or the work that the Harpswell Aging at Home group is doing?
Harpswell Aging at Home has a website, so if you Google it, you'll come to the web page, and it lists all the programs that we offer, and there's a calendar there. There's a way to reach out and ask us what's going on. Lifelong Maine, which is affiliated with the State of Maine Aging Program and the University of Maine, liked our program as well, and they developed a manual to how to start a Romeo group or a group just to get people together. And so that's available to people as well these days. There are a lot of good people who have fabulous ideas and would be willing to share their expertise and experience. One of the first programs Harpswell Aging at Home started was a home repair program. We collaborate with Habitat for Humanity, and the guy who launched that initiative has a 60-page manual on how to do every aspect of a home repair program, which is free. And we have it available to anybody who wants it, so it's free. We'll send it out. There are people who would come and talk about the meals and how that got started. It's a great group of people who are willing to share the expertise and experience they have and help communities develop their own programs.
Well, very good. I appreciate your coming in and talking with me today. And now you said you'll come to one of our Portland Art Gallery openings, first Thursday of every month in Portland, Maine, not so far away from Harpswell. I've been speaking with Tom Mahoney. He's a community connector, resource team leader with Harpswell Aging at Home, very involved with the ROMEO program in the Harpswell region. You've heard how you can reach out to Tom or to his group. I do encourage this as a longtime clinician, family doctor. I've seen the difference that being connected and having a purpose can really make in anyone's life of any age, but particularly if you happen to be older. And I think that wherever it is that you are, that you can connect with another person and a group of people that maybe you do or do not know very well, it's good for your health. So as a physician, I will say I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle. You've been listening to Radio Maine, our video podcast where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit with people who love the state of Maine like I do. You can find us on radiomaine.com. You can find me at the Portland Art Gallery at the first Thursday openings. Apparently you can find Tom at some future first Thursday opening at the Portland Art Gallery. And if you happen to be a reader, you can go to Substack and you can read our Off the Wall about our artists. There's lots of ways for you to connect with us. Apparently there's lots of ways for you to connect with Tom Mahoney. So Tom Mahoney, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Mine too.